Ho, 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 hello, and welcome to Postgres FM. My name is Michael, I'm founder of PG Mustard, and I'm joined as always by Nick from Postgres AI. Merry Christmas, Nick, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. And to all our audience, which
Yeah,
is roughly, as we just counted across all the platforms, roughly 10,000 people. So it's impressive.
yeah, it's kind of wild, but yes, thank you everyone for another good year.
Yeah. So obviously, we wanted to do some overview of this year, 2025, for Postgres. I think it's a great year for Postgres because a lot of stuff, a lot happened and a lot is still happening. And vector of development of product and communities around it and companies and everything, ecosystem, it's astonishing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Feels like it's going from strength to strength, and yeah, as you say, another good year.
Yeah. So where to start? Let's maybe start with some technical topics first. Maybe Postgres 18, obviously one of them, and we had a whole episode about that. And what do you remember? What are achievements of Postgres 18 which shine?
Yeah, good question. I guess one thing we didn't have when Postgres 18 came out and we did the episode was a little bit of hindsight. We didn't know how it was going to go. With a major version, you're always a tiny bit worried there's going to be a big issue in it, and once you get through the release candidates and the beta without that, that's either means there isn't a big issue or it hasn't been found in testing yet. So now with a bit of benefit of hindsight, I think it's gone pretty well, hasn't it? I mean, touch wood, it feels like not only has it gone down well, but people have been reporting some performance improvements. People have actually been upgrading. I'm actually seeing people, in our case, submitting version 18 query plans to the product. So they're using it on production and already
Yeah.
looking into performance things with it. So they've not only upgraded, but have had it in production for a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like people are upgrading, which isn't always the case when a new major version first comes out, and seeing some wins, which is cool.
Yeah, I also feel the pace of upgrades is improving from year to year. I think managed Postgres providers, they polish the procedure and make new Postgres available sooner than in previous years. So it's obviously being noticed, right? So, but in terms of Postgres 18, I remember things like in any overview, somehow UUID version 7, native support of it made it to the like short list of always mentioned things, and
Yeah.
it's great because again, like it started during Postgres TV hacking sessions online. I'm super proud of this. Like like finally it made it after a couple of years of waiting because of like waiting for RFC standard to be finalized. Postgres was very conservative compared to others. It's great that this thing made it, and it's not a huge thing, but it's obviously very useful, helpful for people.
Not a reason to upgrade though, right?
No. Among reasons, I wanted to mention specific one. I know we have customers who are working on upgrade sooner and already made decision to upgrade much sooner than usually to Postgres 18 just because log manager, lightweight log contention is fully solved.
Interesting.
And I have a series of articles exploring this in detail, showing benchmarks. And you just raise, if you upgrade, you just raise max logs per transaction parameter, which requires a restart, unfortunately, but it's like easier than suffering, suffering from lightweight log manager contention. And that's it, like it's solved. So this work also took a few years to make it into final release, and finally we have it. And this is definitely one of the reasons to upgrade. If there are other reasons, I also noticed, as we discussed, AIO.
That's a
Suddenly,
huge
yeah,
one for people. I actually haven't seen many. I think a few people have blogged kind of theoretically about the performance improvements that could be possible there, but I haven't seen anybody publish anything that they upgraded and saw a big improvement due to AIO. But I would say it has driven a lot of interest in the major version, and it could be that it is proving really good for performance. But more than that, it's like a good marketing feature. Like it has driven a lot of interest in the upgrade and people actually considering it.
Yeah, I saw it not in upgrade, but I saw it well, it's actually my blog post, Maxim's and mine blog post
Yeah.
about PG request, and I suddenly noticed that before single-threaded PG base backup only could do 300-400 megabytes per second, but in Postgres 18 it's gigabyte per second on fast disks. So it was a big surprise to me, and it's also like one of the reasons I think should be considered to upgrade sooner. Okay, enough. We can dive into technical details for another episode, but let's move on. What's next? What is big in 2025 on your opinion in terms of technical stuff?
On just the technical side, that's an interesting question. I've got a lot actually in and around the community, but on the technical side, I think one of the bigger things we saw was more efforts. Well, actually, maybe that's community still. Do you consider kind of the efforts to empower and grow more hackers, like more actual Postgres developers, people working on the Postgres core base? Do you consider that technical or more community?
Well, it's less technical. Technical,
Yeah, okay.
if you mentioned the word hackers, let's use this word in different meaning. Remember US Treasury hack?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is quite technical, and there was a case when it was not so good, right? And Postgres obviously used everywhere, so vulnerabilities happen from time to time, and it's obviously technical wise. Postgres has great process to issue new set of minor releases which close vulnerability, but still, like, due to very wide use of Postgres, I think this year Postgres made it to non-technical media, right?
Yeah.
Because of that. And it was mentioned in the context, there was hackers from China hacked US infrastructure and Postgres was involved. So this, I think, it's also kind of trend, and it's slightly less technical, but there is some technical aspect in it. And obviously it means that you need to upgrade in terms of minor upgrades always. Like patches should be applied promptly because things happen, bad things happen, and it's better to keep Postgres up to date in terms of minor version, right? So this is what I just remember this thing.
Nice. I have one more technical one.
Yeah.
Feels like it was a big year for announcements, at least in the sharding space. We got at least three big new projects kicked off to try and shard Postgres specifically for OLTP.
Yes, exactly. So we had episodes with pgdoc, Lev Kokotov, pgdoc.
Yep.
We have had episode with Sugu, Multigrass, which is developed inside Supabase. And yeah, these are two like things which are purely open source, and there is a non-open source product. Planscale is developing, right? So yeah,
I think they've said they're going to open source it, but it's all private at the moment.
Yeah, we have two open source things we can also. Actually, not we can. My team has already tested in terms of latency overhead almost all of them.
Is Multigrass testable already?
I've heard kind of yes. I cannot say for sure. Like it's yeah, there is something there already. Yeah. So I will let them to announce all the things, but it's definitely being developed quite rapidly. You can go and check pull requests, and what I like about open source is very transparent, right? So you know what's already happening in vector in which it's being developed. In both cases, pgdoc and Multigrass. This is great power of open source.
Yeah, true. And it's interesting, like how they're choosing slightly different trade-offs, and I think it will be fascinating in the coming years, kind of 3-4 years time. I'd be really interested to see who's using which systems, what are the trade-offs, like which kind of systems benefit most from one approach versus the other. Does the license matter? I think pgdoc and Multigrass have gone different directions on the licensing front. Language, yeah, exactly. So it will be interesting, but this felt like the big year. I think it was, I've written down, it was May that PGDog was first announced, June that Multigress was first announced, and August that Neki was first
Yeah,
announced. So
yeah,
quite a short, if you consider how long it's been since we had a new potential sharding solution, and then three
yeah.
come along in a few months, it feels like the timing was right for that to happen now.
So yeah, there are companies which do need it, and there is big demand, including companies who don't need it. This is like
Yeah.
tricky part with sharding. More people think they need it than actually need it, but it always was a weak side of Postgres ecosystem, lack of reliable and mature sharding solution. We had Cytos, we had PGCat, we had SPQR, and none of them was publicly known to be used in big OLTP projects, like huge scale, like for Vitess. Vitess we have GitHub, Slack, and so on, Pinterest. Here we didn't have such stories. We still don't have such stories yet, but I'm 100% sure we will have it soon, just because of this year development.
Yeah, the big projects that sharded Postgres, almost all of them seemed, or at least the ones that have talked about it publicly, did so application side. So they have sharded, but it's all on their own heads basically, or using a framework, not a.
Oh yeah. We had episode 100 terabyte Postgres.
Yeah.
It was great, and 2 or 3 guests. I think all the guests use basically application side sharding.
Yeah.
But at least one of them have good articles about this. I think Notion, right? Notion.
And
yeah?
Figma did too. Figma did.
Okay, great. So, like, you can do sharding yourself, of course, right? But it's good to have some system. And obviously, we are going to have multiple systems, which will be used in big companies soon.
I think the Vitesse thing's really interesting as well, though, because I think there's you mentioned more people want sharding than need sharding. I think there is like a really attractive thing to early stage startups that having to tell all their investors they're going to be the biggest thing ever, probably have to believe that as well. So they want, and some of them it is true, right? Like some of them are going to need. We talked about one last week where it was they should have partitioned a year ago, but they only launched a year ago. So there are these startups that need a small database at the beginning, and they're going to need sharding within a couple of years because they're going to scale that fast. So for them, the story of, and it used to be, let's say, planet scale with Vitesse, or just Vitesse in general, was you can start small with us, and then you can have a sharded setup when you're ready. It was the same story with Mongo many years ago. It was this kind of like unlimited growth or web scale. Do you remember that phrase? So it is really, it will be nice. Like, and I think that kind of transitions onto 2 things I had on my list. One was, I think MySQL's loss is Postgres' gain this year. I think there's been quite a few, firstly, planet scale coming into the Postgres ecosystem, but also I think there were some stories more recently around a lot of MySQL's team getting laid off. So I think momentum on that's been kind of shifting and slowing for a while since the Oracle acquisition, maybe longer. But I think Postgres is ready to take up the slack, and the work on sharding is part of that story, because I don't think we did have a good answer to Vitesse until. Well, and we maybe arguably still don't, but it feels promising that hopefully one of these 3, if not more than one of these 3, prove to be good.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's why I actually mentioned the stories matter. So we have stories published about successful sharding of Postgres to great scale in DIY approach. But we need more like case studies, and I think I'm looking forward to next couple of years to hear about successful use of new sharding solutions. So it's going to be great. This is great foundation this year. Basically, answer that Postgres won't be considered as very limited OLTP database system where you will be scared to hit some walls. Right. So this is a great year for this topic. I like it a lot. Okay, let's move on. Maybe mention less technical stuff. I think there is a big movement in terms of startups and Postgres companies, pure Postgres companies, and less pure, but also very Postgres-related companies. For example, let's start from maybe there are bad news and good news, right? Bad news, I think, what do you think about Yugabyte? I think Yugabyte is struggling. It's not pure Postgres, but it showed some like way to also sharded solution, right? But I think it's struggling. I see people like left, many people, and I also think the topic we just discussed, as native sharding solution, we will have multiple OLTP to achieve great scale and automation. They are going basically to say Yugabyte is not needed anymore. What do you think?
I honestly don't know. And I think when we said lots of more people want sharded than need it, I think the same is true for distributed. I think I categorize them slightly differently in my mind, like sharded and distributed. And I think maybe the difference is the idea of writing to multiple primaries in different availability zones. It feels like it's this kind of like you pay the tax on latency, and for some it's 100% worth it, but for a lot that trade-off isn't worth it. And I think a lot more people think they want multi-master, or whatever I don't know what the appropriate phrase is for that now, but multi-primary.
Multi-master is fine these days. Again, I'm joking.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't.
I'm joking.
But yeah, so my main point is, I think for the kind of financial institutions or big banks that need it, it's hugely valuable. But I think most companies don't need that, and the trade-offs aren't worth it. But I don't have no idea how they're doing. And also, it's kind of Postgres compatible, right? Do you consider it Postgres?
Yeah, you're right. It's more Postgres compatible than CockroachDB, but it's definitely not pure Postgres. Anyway, I think solutions we just discussed are going to meet needs of people who start with just small one Postgres, like more naturally, than migrating to other systems. Although at the same time, we must admit that, for example, AlloyDB feels good. I have customers who migrated to AlloyDB, and actually I can mention Gadget, for example. We had an episode with Gadget CTO, right, Harry, and we just found out that our monitoring system works well with AlloyDB, and like AlloyDB also has bloat and so on, things to take care of. It's interesting. So it feels like Postgres, although there is a lot of rewritten. Also, this year I think it's important to mention Amazon DSQL, although it's not open source at all, but it also like plays in the same area for enterprises. We are not limited, distributed, everything, like multi-region, everything. And they are quite active in terms of development, I think, although it's not my area at all. Like I'm pure Postgres guy, and I consider all these friends of Postgres, so to speak. Some of them open source, some are not. It's just like, for me, it's great to have them around, but I think pure Postgres should be majority in terms of choices.
Yeah, and while like each of the hyperscalers has their version of this product, right? This kind of distributed Postgres compatible, for whatever definition of Postgres compatible that they're going with this year. But there has still been significant contributions from these hyperscalers to pure Postgres, and I think there is a kind of alternative timeline where we wouldn't be seeing the likes of AWS and Microsoft, and even a little bit Google Cloud, but like lots and lots of companies, but including those hyperscalers, actually contributing back to pure Postgres, not just making their own proprietary forks. So it's been quite. I really hope it continues. But this year it certainly feels like a lot of the contributions we got, a lot of the improvements in Postgres 18, a lot of the community efforts came from these big companies, and I would include EDB in that as well, in terms of big companies continuing to like invest in pure
Microsoft
Postgres.
Horizon DB. This is fresh news. Yeah. I lost track for this enterprise attempt, enterprise Postgres topic, right? Like many options. I think pure Postgres is a player in enterprise, and it's going to stay as a player in enterprise. Although we have Aurora, AlloyDB, Horizon DB, DSQL, who else? Yeah, EDB, everything.
Well, but all of them also offer a separate product that is much, much closer to pure Postgres.
Right.
So AWS have RDS, Google have Cloud SQL. if I actually always forget what Microsoft call theirs, but every single one of them have one that
Horizon DB,
no,
I mean.
no, have one that looks just like Postgres, that
Azure,
acts just like Postgres.
Postgres.
Yeah, it's something like uh,
Yeah, okay.
for PostgreSQL, something like I can't remember.
We
its
have
name.
customers, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
With Microsoft, I touch Microsoft much less than others. Yeah. Okay.
Microsoft is good at a lot of things, but naming products is not one of them.
Well, Google is champion.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we have so many flavors of Postgres, right? And obviously there is interesting competition in the area of sharding, and there is obvious competition which not started this year. It started much earlier. That now it's becoming definitely like kind of a red ocean in terms of enterprise Postgres topic, right? This is absolutely a red ocean. Every big company is playing there. Every big cloud company is playing there.
Yeah, good. That's an interesting point because if you're talking about it being highly, highly competitive, normally what you'd expect to see if that was the case would be prices starting to come down. And I don't think we've seen that. Like I still think they're charging quite a premium for but if it was truly a red ocean, I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing the kind of enterprise contract negotiations. Maybe that's where the prices are coming down.
Well, yeah, maybe you're right. I think there are segments there, and in the segment of like big Postgres, enterprise Postgres, I think there are different methods to cut prices. They all like normal cloud ways, like saving plans and so on.
Yeah.
But they don't rush into going down in terms of prices for Postgres for one machine. Obviously, there is big premium there. Yeah. In terms of technical things, trends this year, not touching AI yet, but maybe moving closer to it. I think branching is becoming like slowly, very slowly. It makes its way to being commodity. It's not yet there at all. Like I think, and branching is still very rare. It's not like not everyone has it. But
I feel like there's two trends, right? Like I feel like there's branching and there's also cloning, and these are very kind of like similar topics, and they're kind of being converged at. And some platforms and some systems offer cloning. Well,
copy on the right.
But some platforms offer thin cloning. But mostly it's thick cloning. But that's still valuable for some amounts of like experimentation and test
which
runs.
ADS had always like since the almost very beginning, and now
Heroku even offered it. Yeah,
right. But if it's thick, well, tooling is improving there for sure. But I'm big fan of I'm big fan of thin cloning, and we have our own product DB Lab for database branching and thin cloning. And I think if before this year, Neon was there, DB Lab was there, and that's it. Now we see Timescale, Tiger Data playing there.
That happened this year.
Understanding its role for AI and experiments. It's great. Like this is exactly how I see it always for many years already. And their CTO Mike just posted yesterday an article how Replit is doing this similar thing.
Yeah.
So experimentation at scale, like in isolated environments, and to make it fast and cheap, you need copy and write. So this is the way you can have a lot of ideas how to improve your database, and not everything can be verified on thin cloning, but a lot of ideas can be verified and in the isolated Postgres instances, and database branching is great. For example, definitely everything related to query optimization at macro level. We discussed it many times. Working with plans, verifying ideas. This is absolutely needed thing. Otherwise, you become too slow, too expensive, and you are limited. And in the topic of self-driving Postgres, we actually yesterday I noticed big trend. Like people started talking about autonomous Postgres and self-driving Postgres. We had I have a post. Someone from EDB mentioned something, and I also posted. So this is part of autonomous Postgres for sure. Automated experimentation and branching is essential part of this vision. And we have pieces already when companies start implementing this. Yeah, so this works at GitLab with DB Lab for many years already, so I'm happy this topic becomes more and more popular, and future of self-driving Postgres also, like, it's still foggy, but we have components which already becoming quite clear, and we see how to achieve levels of automation, very high levels of automation. Yeah. So
did you see in this on this topic area of like branching, thin cloning, and copy on write? Did you see there was a recent post by Redeem from, at Boring SQL talking about a feature in Postgres 18 that I'd missed? That is like you can create database within Postgres and specify a strategy, and that can use if your file system supports. Yeah.
I actually also missed it. I remember this discussion on Hackers mailing list, but I somehow overlooked it. So it's already Postgres 18. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, great. I haven't verified myself, but this blog post says so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll share it.
It has limited scope of use. So I think if you control everything, all experimentation environments very well, you can definitely use it. So basically you have one single Postgres instance and each create database. If it's based on copy and write, it's fast and cheap. It brings you isolated logical database for experimentation, but it's not for everything. For example, in the case of DB Lab, you can perform major upgrade of clone and test. Here it will be not possible because it's a single instance. Although working with like ideas how to verify indexes, plain tuning, this will work for sure. This is great.
Yeah. And baked into Postgres already. That's super cool.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I need to revisit this. Somehow overlooked as well. Great. I think what we see in the future, more tools which will automate experimentation for optimization, performance optimization. And instead of like throwing something to LLM and sitting with ideas which you don't know which of them are correct, which are completely wrong, you will throw to some tool and the LLM will generate ideas. Well, this is actually already happening. We just don't have it connected to all the pieces, right? But ideas are verified on clones, on thin clones, right?
Yeah.
And the user receives already ideas which were considered during brainstorm phase, and then ideas which didn't work, and ideas which worked best, proposed to apply in production.
Yeah.
Right.
I personally think this is a topic that has got a lot of legs for the coming years, but I don't think we've seen yet that much. Like I think we've only seen the beginnings of this topic.
Only pieces, some basically like building blocks we have.
Yeah.
The final, like the whole solution is yet to be built. I agree.
Did you see much progress on that kind of the vector search side of things this year?
Oh, yeah. I remember I started here looking at TurboPuffer. With founder, we also had an episode. So it's great. It confirms it's great, successful year for Postgres, but also for Postgres FM podcast, because we had great episodes covering areas which are important for users, right? So TurboPuffer, great, and this approach with vectors is in S3, and S3 also now has a vector type.
Yeah,
I revisited it recently, and it's outside of Postgres. But why I started looking at it, because I noticed clients who come to us using Postgres, they use them, and also I noticed it's used in Cursor. So that's how there's TurboPuffer. So combination Postgres plus TurboPuffer, it's kind of like I saw trend similar to like Elastic, Postgres plus Elastic, right? Similar, like something happening, and I thought like it's great, like in terms of price and like technology is great, and S3 also has vectors now, but I think it's still to be understood use cases for all of these approaches, and PG vector is going to stay. I wish it was in core. I don't see how it's possible now. But
have there been conversations about? I haven't been looking closely, but I might have missed them. But have there been conversations about doing something in core, like formally?
All beginnings of conversations were just like interrupted. Like this index type is not normal because it's answering different results, right? Because it's due to its approximate nature. Basically, it's not deterministic, right?
Yeah.
And this brings new challenges. So to be considered as a like core thing, but in my opinion, it must be in core to be developed properly and be considered as something like super standard. Although PG Vector is super standard thanks to all managed platforms supporting it as well.
Yeah.
So all people start there. I wanted to say this. I don't see anyone who solved 1 billion vectors problem yet. All those who claim they solve it, I think they are lying.
It's like the spacing, right? What do they call it? Like
they say yes, but you need to basically partition it, right? So it's not one index; it's multiple indexes. They like key spaces, namespaces, call it use any word. But what it means is that you don't have a single index which supports good OLTP scale, OLTP latencies, meaning it's definitely much faster than 1 second for a single query, and has covering 1 billion vectors. Nobody does it. S3 including, right? S3 also like has maximum, I don't remember, 50 million or how many vectors in one index supports. So anyway, this is unsolved problem, and it's unsolved, I think, everywhere, not inside Postgres ecosystem. So it's a big problem still. How to have a single index. Why do we need a single index? Maybe we don't need it. Maybe we can always split it. PGDoc also showed how to combine sharding and pgvector, right? So you can have multiple Postgres instances and so on. Questions about price and so on also can pop up, but TurboPuffer is not open source. Again, like we have great open source tooling already, and if you combine with sharding, maybe you are fine. But I haven't seen a single 1 billion scale index which would work.
Why does it matter? Like, if I have a partition table, that doesn't have a single index on it. Like,
right.
So why does it matter?
Complexity. If you talk about regular indexes, having a few billion records in a table, it's not a problem at all. And latency will be amazing if you have index-only scan or just index scan. If you know it very well, right? If you don't have this rows filtered out, right? But when it comes to vectors, if you have 1 billion vectors and you try to cover it with single index, build time will be terrible for HNSW, latency will be terrible, so it's not OLTP. It doesn't meet OLTP standards, which we know like 100, 200 milliseconds maximum because of human perception.
Yeah, but not for search.
For search including, for people.
Search is one of those use cases where people are willing to, okay, fine.
No. Are you okay if you Google something and you need to wait 10 seconds? You're not okay. Should be fast.
No, yeah, it's a good point actually. I think Google is probably the proof that search is important to be fast.
Of course,
because that's what they've always focused on.
Yeah, people need it everywhere. Like you have mobile app, you type something you want like to move it very fast. Like if it's below 100 milliseconds, it doesn't feel like slow. That's great. So we have human perception, which defines what OLTP is, right? So
you don't need to convince me that performance matters and it's good. But I was just thinking
search is considered part of application. It's not like we have search system. Okay, in some cases, okay, if it's a lawyer who needs to pull some lawsuits from history, like related to the topic they are working on right now, they can wait a minute, no problem. Or if it's like BI report. This actually means we overlooked one trend as well. Analytical thing, right? So Parquet, Iceberg, and DuckDB, and how to bring all this in Postgres. A few companies played good game, and we are acquired, right?
I would say this was huge news. I think, let's say last year. And then I think this year what happened as a result were possibly that one of the biggest analytics databases companies in the world acquired what was one of the most promising companies in this space. So I had that on my list to cover. I was thinking that's more community side of things, but I guess it's technical because it came about probably because of their progress on the analytics space.
Yeah, so obviously Crunchy Data started to work with analytical side of Postgres, which was always considered weak. and had great achievements and got acquired for $250 million. And Neon, although they didn't play a lot with analytics. They did something with DuckDB, as I saw. Like they tried here and there things, but still it was purely OLTP thing, right? For with branching and super fast point-in-time recovery and serverless, everything, and got acquired by Snowflake for $1 billion.
Databricks.
Oh, Databricks, yes. The Snowflake, Crunchy, Databricks, Neon, right. And they are, as we see, they both work to bring solutions which are combined, like analytics plus OLTP and everything. We could consider this also like from different angle, but this is also a game to conquer like enterprise Postgres topic, right? Just coming from analytical perspective first. And it's interesting. Like I like what's happening, and I also like that some people don't like to be not in open source environment, and more talents are available.
Oh, interesting.
To be hired because of these acquisitions. Yeah, of course, it's natural because both Snowflake and Databricks, I don't consider them as pro open source companies at all. And we know Neon. I haven't checked for a few weeks, but Neon stopped showing any commits on GitHub since July, right?
Yeah, that's the tricky thing with acquisitions like this, because if you read the posts about what the plan is and what they're announcing is going to happen, and then watch for 5 years, quite often those things don't align. So it's really difficult to assess these things within 6 months of them happening as to why did it happen? Is this a good thing for the community? Is it a bad thing for the community? It's really hard to tell. It could be the best thing ever, or it could be awful, and it's really hard to tell this close to it which of those is going to be the case.
Yeah, in this context, I would like to mention also a couple of companies which I like what's happening as well. Like you can see like some negative sides, but you can see a lot of positive sides in everywhere. For example, PlaneScale came to Postgres ecosystem.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And they resurrected the old topic which some people tried to bring life into. It's let's use local NVMe disks. That's great, like absolutely great. And they also, I like what they do a lot in a lot of areas. I don't like their position with open source because I don't see what open source they produce at all. They just use Vitess, which was created before PlaneScale, and that's it.
And maintain it, I think, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's of course. But what else? So anyway, but I like a lot what they do, and they brought absolutely different, I think, different kind of views at things which Postgres ecosystem somehow missed. So, it's kind of blood of MySQL ecosystem was merged to Postgres ecosystem, and this is great. I've different points of view and so on, and this feels really great, and this year achievement, I think, in terms of Postgres ecosystem development. And another is, of course, Supabase, which is pure open source. They bet heavily on open source and multigress and OreoloDB and all things, and this is their I think strategy to do things open source. And
and not just, I would say not just open source, but with permissive licenses.
Yeah,
I think that's incredible. I think it's something that people don't really fully appreciate of how important it was for PostgreSQL to have not just an open source license, but a really permissive open source license.
Yeah, like Apache, MIT. Yeah,
exactly, and
Postgres license.
Yeah, all of them extremely permissive, and I mean they're not copyleft, they're not AGP, they're actively trying to encourage collaboration and allowing people to use it for commercial purposes is
right.
So long.
Common misconception here. AGPL and GPL, they are more open source than these permissive licenses, right? But somehow people avoid them because they cannot build commercial cloud things on top of them. Yeah.
I'm not trying to get into an argument as to what's more or less open source. I'm saying that the fact they're permissive, I think, is
freedom.
Yeah, and I think it's good for everybody. It's good for the rest of us.
Unprotected freedom. This is how you can see it, because somebody can clone and create commercial software based on that easy.
Well, and I think it's about betting on the long term. Like I think it's about saying commercial things will come and go, but
It's
this
interesting
will
topic,
still
but
this will still be here.
it's off topic. Yes,
Yeah,
I
all right.
apologize. Yeah,
I wanted to
we need
credit them for
we
it.
need
I
to
think
wrap it
that
up. I just
yeah,
wanted to
fine.
mention that Supabase growth is like absolutely crazy, and why? Because a lot of tools which are also growing crazy, they basically bring a lot of development activities even from non-developers, vibe coding, right? Like many platforms are grow, and Postgres became, well, like, it's obvious this year Postgres is default database for vibe coding. This is 100% like as of end of 2025, it's so. And Supabase growth, and Neon mentioning that 80% or something of databases are created because of vibe coding and AI agents and so on.
On Neon, yeah. What about Replit? I actually didn't finish reading the. What did you see the post that Mike was responding to? Is
Yeah,
that Postgres?
yeah, it's Postgres, yeah. So Postgres everywhere.
Yeah, nice. I would say the thing about Superbase and PlanetScale and people like that, they're also amazing at marketing, and I think that's underrated in the Postgres ecosystem in terms of being good for the project. They've kind of brought some of that energy of, early MongoDB, that people are actually excited to use it. Developers want to use it. They think it's like an easy thing. You know what I mean? It's that kind of like, it's cool all of a sudden. And I don't know if I've been here long enough that to remember the last time that it was actually cool. So
I
yeah,
don't know. Yeah, let's mention Frank Pashol who left
yeah,
Postgres world, but he says not fully left. Right? We also had an episode, right?
yeah.
And joined MongoDB. So that's also interesting. Last time I used MongoDB was 12 years ago. I don't know. Last time I listened to them was 2018 in VLDB Los Angeles.
But if we go back, if you look at startups that are 12 years old, a lot of them will be on Mongo, or 11 years old, 10
Okay.
years old. And I think we're going to see this, like startups that started now, like last year, this year, next year, a lot of them are going to be on Postgres. And I think that's really healthy for the ecosystem.
Yeah. And also challenging because people even don't
Yeah,
realize what is it.
fair.
Yeah,
What do you mean the vibe coders?
right. So I think
Yeah,
there are challenges in the area of explaining basics. I think demand on understanding like simple basics. Like for us, vacuum is basic, but maybe it's not basics. Relational things are basics. Like sometimes I see different platforms go at different levels there. Some people like Supabase, they expose whole Postgres. You can play with tables and so on. Some like Gadget, for example, they expose concept of indexes, but they don't
yeah,
let you to connect to Postgres directly. So more like vibe side. So different levels here. It's so cool. Like you
yeah,
can choose how deep you can go. But if you go and you don't understand, you need. I think demand for good education of relational databases and Postgres is growing because of all these activities. And on one hand, on another hand, demand for good maintenance, operational tools and practices and methodologies also growing, because imagine how many databases are created now every day. A year ago it was much less, right? Postgres, like number of databases is exploding this year, literally
Do you
right now.
think, but don't you
And
think their shelf life is also reducing? Like,
of course, most of them
yeah,
won't survive. Yeah,
yeah,
we're just experimenting, vibe coding, like throwing out later. But some of them will survive.
yeah,
And
of
they need
course.
a path for good health, right?
Yeah,
That's why I think self-driving is also like new trend which is going to stay, and it's great to have examples of previous attempts as Oracle Autonomous. We can learn from them,
all right.
and others. Yeah, okay. We'll definitely discuss this topic not once in future. I'm quite sure.
It's not, yeah,
Well, again, like trend is obvious. Trend started here in 2025.
okay. But yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see how important it turns out to be in 2026. My opinion is actually that the ones that survive can then be given a bit more attention. So
Of
like
course.
it's going to be not that. Think it's still difficult to get a business up and running and to a huge scale. The ones that do it are still incredible, and there's still not that many. I don't see that there's going to be tens of thousands more of those really successful huge companies, but they might get there quicker and with fewer technical resources in the beginning. So they'll need support for sure, but I don't see
Well,
the argument that there's going to be an order of magnitude more of
my
them.
my team feels it really well. Regular, imagine enterprises, regular startups, they are different,
Yeah.
right? And there is new breed AI startups. These guys move really fast. They like database expertise even more. They are
Yeah.
very often very smart, but they are different from regular startups, and I feel it just from perspective how like work with databases are organized. So this trend will only grow in the future. It started this year, I think. We noticed it this year, but it will not disappear. I think this is something new.
And you don't think they'll hire, like, you think they won't hire for those like specialties once they grow?
I think they will, but they move so fast. You can hire, but then what? Like it's too late. Like you mentioned this case about partitioning, right? With regular methods, this new hire with absolutely great knowledge will come, but it will be too late. It's already should be done a year ago.
But it's not too late. Like it's not. Success generally brings like enough money to solve these problems. Like you hire a good consultancy to help out, but you can
I'm
like
not joking. I heard let's migrate to different database system maybe. Yeah,
okay. So you think for Postgres'
it's a
survival,
challenge. Yeah.
but
So like
yeah,
if database cannot scale without like too much attention and too much manual work, it won't survive at its hyper growth. It's we had this term hyperscalers. AI is going to bring new level of hyperscaling. So we need to adjust. Thank you so much. Let's keep let's say Happy Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone, and let's continue New Year with all these trends and good Postgres health, good Postgres tools, good open source. It's great to be in this ecosystem and this community in broader meaning. And I really enjoy making this podcast with you, Michael, and also Happy New Year and Merry Christmas.
absolutely. Likewise. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nick. I do too, and see you in 2026.